Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're just going to be doing a hopefully short little one-off video here. Um, so recently, I heard about some information that I think will be relevant to uh, the content in general on this channel, being the great conversation of philosophy and history, or philosophy and the great ideas throughout history. And that is so within the U.S. The organization run by Elon Musk under the secretary or the chief of staff, uh, or Elon reports to the chief of staff of through the and runs the organization called DOGE. Uh, is So DOGE is cutting funding to the Department of Education,
And
which
DOGE is the Department of Government Efficiency.
correct, yeah, thank you. Um,
For
so
anyone
yeah,
who doesn't know,
yeah, thank you. Thank you, by the way. I think I forgot to mention the the acronym there. But yeah, so DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, is cutting funding to specifically one aspect of the cuts that DOGE is engaging in, or the budgetary cuts that DOGE is engaging in, is the Department of Education's research arm, the Institute of Education Sciences, or the IES, um, reducing, uh, resulting in about a 1%, or comprising of about 1% of the entire federal government's 2025 budget. Um, and so, as a consequence, the staff of the Department of Education at the federal level is supposed to be cut in half, or reduced by half. Um, and then in terms of savings of, or that DOGE has been doing overall, uh, some figures overestimate independent predictions, uh, between DOGE and independent predictions, and then others underestimate the amount saved. Only a certain number of figures um, that DOGE has released on Twitter, among other um platforms on social media, and through other means, have been confirmed between sources to be accurate. And so, I guess to start out, or to continue, uh, the Department of Education is an organization that functions within, uh, or under congressional legislation, and it was started in 1979 by President Jimmy Carter, through what is called the Department of Education Organization Act. And then, with this law enacted, the Department of Education falls within the president's cabinet. Um, and then, and so some of the Department of Education's roles and responsibilities include establishing education policies, administering federal funding, which uh, is, I guess, monitored through through Congress, um, because of Congress's power of the purse, which will be mentioned later. Um, Ensuring equal access, which essentially um, essentially is Title IX, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Um, and so it ensures equal educational opportunities for all, regardless of race, gender, uh, disability, or socioeconomic status, and other um, other categories that are not legal to be discriminated upon, or on the basis of, I guess it would be. Um,
And so those titles, the various titles, are those like laws put forward by one of the departments, like the Department of Education, or is there a relationship between the laws and the departments? Do they like sponsor them, or are they like explicitly upheld by that department rather than uh, like just general federal or state courts, or is there a relationship there?
so Title IX, or the Civil Rights Act, was signed into law by President Nixon, and so it was. Sorry, I'm kind of just doing this on the fly here. That's a good question though. Um,
That's all right. I didn't realize that was the Civil Rights Act. Uh, it reminds me of something I heard about a study that showed very different results for whether people supported Medicaid versus the, health care, whatever, Health Care Affordability Act or whatever, which is just the formal name of Medicaid or Medicare, and there are totally different results. Shows that a name matters a lot. People don't always know what the formal names of things are.
mhm. So yeah, I think it'd be Congress pretty much, as far as I'm aware. But again, uh, viewers, don't quote me on that. Please, we encourage you to do your own research, and if there's questions that we don't have, or that we don't answer to your satisfaction, please feel free to do your own research and find the answers to your questions. And if we have any sort of expertise or confidence in the matter, we'll be happy to at least aid you in the right direction. But yeah, I guess to go back to your question, Caleb, I think I would say that Congress is kind of, or Congress, or the would be probably the main kind of arm in, I guess, enforcing that kind of a thing. Where was I? Title IX, correct? Or enforcing equal access, reducing discrimination, correct?
Yes. So the laws are independent. They're from the departments. They're from Congress, but the department, I guess, is involved in enforcing Title IX and various educational policies and laws, and making sure there isn't discrimination.
Yeah, pretty much. Another, or I guess, and then to clarify, these aren't necessarily all of the roles and responsibilities of the Department of Education. These are just a number of the more explicit ones. Um,
I've also heard
Another.
they.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I've also heard they handle various grants. I would imagine federal grants for schooling. Not sure that the details on that. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So because Congress is the one who uh, carries out the fiscal, the monetary type responsibilities of the federal government, all funding would have to come from the come from Congress, um, as kind of stated in Congress's responsibilities within the Constitution. So uh, any sort of like personal funding wouldn't be necessarily lawful, I would say, unless it went through Congress to the departments, since money type matters are are exclusively Congress's to take care of. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Is that the power of the purse you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, do you have any more questions before we continue?
I think that's good. So,
Cool.
yeah, handles Title IX, civil rights, grants as long as it's through Congress, something like that. And what else does the Department of Education do?
So yeah, to kind of recap, establishing educational policies, administering federal funding, um, ensuring equal access, collecting and disseminating data is a new one that I haven't mentioned yet, and that kind of goes into one of the things that DOGE kind of you could say cracked down on. Um, Fiscally, really. The Institute of Education Sciences, which again is their research division, kind of which gathers data on schools, student performance, educational trends, making it available to policy makers, sorry, educators, and the public. For example, through the National Center for Education Statistics, which um, is kind of the housing of all of that data, uh, where it's pretty readily available as far as I'm aware. Um, and then another thing that it's uh, the Department of Education is in charge of support or of ensuring is supporting educational improvement through funds allocated by Congress, and promotes programs aimed at enhancing teaching, learning, and school performance, such as teacher training and curriculum development initiatives. Um, it also, in addition to this, it also oversees student aid programs, uh, such as federal student loan programs, and ensures compliance with repayments and forgiveness options. And then this is kind of um, I guess a sub point within the third thing that I mentioned about ensuring equal access, but and then to Title IX, which we've talked about, which is enforcing civil rights in education, which entails investigation of complaints and ensuring schools comply with federal civil rights laws, like ADA, IDEA, and Title IX, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Uh, that's IDEA, um, or what is called IDEA. Um, and then, in addition to this, uh, the Department of Education is responsible for promoting innovation and research as well through IES, among other research organizations that they may have access to. Um,
Is that specifically innovation with regards to education, or do they
mhm.
have kind of a more flexibility?
uh, so it's as far as I'm aware, it's research involved in the innovation of education in order to provide or to improve outcomes.
Hmm.
Um, and then this next point is kind of a, redundancy as well, um, in regards to uh, providing insight into policy making. Um, excuse me. Uh, but the Department of Education is also involved in advising national educational goals, providing insight and guidance to Congress, through the data, as well as the president, on educational priorities and legislative needs in terms of educational policy. And then the last one, which of course may not be an exclusive list, but it's involved in monitoring of compliance as well, and oversees the compliance with federal education laws by states, schools, and institutions that receive federal funds. So, which excludes private schools, basically, as well as homeschooling, individuals involved in homeschooling, which would, uh, I guess, culminate in a what's the word? It's not the diploma, but
The
if you
like
don't
GRE or the test.
oh yeah, yeah,
That they have to
the
take.
GED, yeah.
GED, that's what it is.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I guess a follow up question to this would be whether the Department of Education is constitutional. Um, and then, so like, given or proponents to, uh, wait a second. Proponents of the Department of Education's constitutionality argue that given Section or Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 of the Constitution, which I'll kind of post a thing here on the bottom to kind of give a blurb on that. They argue that education is promoting the general welfare of the citizens, and they also refer to the necessary and proper clause of the same article section, but clause 18, um, which uh, is a little bit too long to post as a what's the word, as a banner down there. So I'll just read it to you. It says, "The Congress shall not have no power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper." Wait, sorry. "The Congress shall have power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper," which is what I was referring to, "for the carrying out into the execution of executing the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States by any department or in any department or officer thereof." Um, so again, that kind of just reiterates the necessary and proper uh, sort of sentiment among uh, proponents of the constitutionality of the good heavens, Department of Education.
So
And
basically,
then
Congress can make laws to make sure things are working well.
mhm. Yeah, the a lot of the implicit things I've noticed that Congress seems to be in charge of that aren't necessarily in the Constitution seem to be, uh, I guess, mentioned or named, or like considered as falling within the necessary and proper clause, or
Mm.
for the general welfare. Sorry. Um,
Yeah, it is pretty vague, pretty general. So you
mhm.
can make laws for things to work. Okay?
Yeah, which is definitely quite vague. Uh, but yeah, and then on the flip side, uh, the dissenters of the constitutionality of the Department of Education argue that since education is not strictly enumerated in the as a power within Article 1, Section 8, that it shouldn't be a thing. As the powers of Congress, as you can see on the screen here, include the ability to make or to lay and collect taxes, regulate commerce, declare war, raise and support armies and a navy, and then like we were just saying a second ago, this hazy one of the making of all laws necessary and proper for the carrying out of these powers. Um,
So
so
the argument is that the Department of Education was created through Congress, but Congress shouldn't have the authority to do that because it isn't specified.
yeah. And then additionally, in the 10th Amendment, uh, which is pretty short, so I'm able to post it on the bottom of the screen here again. It says or it states that the powers not given to the federal government are allocated to the states individually, and then in the case of precedent, uh, uh, for the or I guess kind of corroborating, you could say the. Oh, we lost Caleb.
Hey, I'm back.
Welcome back. I was just saying, in the case of precedent, or in terms of corroboration of the 10th Amendment, in 1995, United States versus Lopez shows the limits of the federal power under the Commerce Clause, which could apply by analogy, essentially. And then, I guess to kind of shift gears here, I'll talk a little bit about DOGE, and then I guess conclude with the or how to amend the Constitution, basically. Like, and I guess before that, what is explicit and then implicit within the Constitution, and then and then I'll conclude with how to amend the Constitution. But yeah, so what is DOGE? The DOGE is not a cabinet department, unlike um, actually, yeah. So unlike the Department of Education, which falls within the cabinet, DOGE is not a cabinet department. Um, and then it was formalized uh, under executive order by President Trump. Uh, and that was on January 20th of 2025. And it comes from a repurposing of the previously existing U.S. Digital Service, or the USDS, which was created by Obama in 2014, maintaining the acronym, which they shifted a little bit to become DOGE, or the what was it again, Caleb? The acronym for DOGE.
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry. Department of Government Efficiency.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'll keep you unmuted. And then, according to Executive Order number 14158, the USDS was established quote, established in the office of in the executive office of the president, end quote, and reports to the chief of staff, as I mentioned earlier. DOGE was quote, established in the executive office of the president and reports to the chief of staff. Um,
So you said Doge was kind of a rebranding of the U.S. Digital Service, so it's the U.S. Department of Government Efficiency Service now, USDS.
uh, Good question. So there's actually a aspect of Doge, or an aspect of Doge that is to be um, I guess terminated in where is it? So there's a aspect of Doge. Thank you. Uh, Called, or I guess an arm within Doge called the U.S. Doge Temporary Service Temporary Organization, which is set to disband next year on July 4th. So July 4th of 2026, uh, as the as the case may be, and is meant to uh, comply with the president's 18-month agenda, which can be found online in greater detail. Um,
Which we should have in the description.
yeah, yeah.
Link in the
I'll put a
description.
link to the uh, link to that in the description of this video. Uh, uh, to the president's 18-month agenda in the description. And then so Musk, the essentially leader of Doge, because he is not technically um, a quote unquote confirmed officer, but is explicitly considered a special government employee. His role is uh, not a it is essentially a, advisory role instead of an executive role. So um, powers that so that kind of limit the power of what he can do to more advising and in terms of policy making, really, in order to uh, for the appropriate organizations to do uh, any sort of decisive action other than advising. Um, do you have any questions, by the way? I realize I haven't asked that in a bit.
So Musk is a special government employee for Doge. The specific arm of Doge, the Service Temporary Organization, will be disbanded next year. At the time of recording this, 2026.
Mhm.
But Doge will continue because
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
now
So
it's its own organization.
yeah, so that's one of the things that I investigated when I was doing my research on this topic. But yeah, it at first glance it looked like Doge was going to shut down in the end of 2026, or in the middle of 2026. But it's just going to be the uh, the U.S. Doge Service Temporary Organization that's gonna shut down. So unless there's some sort of legislation that shuts Doge down, then Doge will stay open.
And it's not a department. Well, it is a department, right? Just like the Department of Education or Department of Energy, it's the Department of Government Efficiency. So it's, I guess, just as constitutional as all the others.
Yeah, and I think
Hmm.
don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure the same kind of justification has been applied to DOGE, but again, don't quote me on that because I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, that kind of leads me to my next question, or whether DOGE is constitutional. And so a number of its functions do fall within the scope of the office of the president, being within the executive branch, um, including or included within the powers of the president is the creation and reorganization of advisory bodies that don't step into Congress's jurisdiction, I guess, which I guess technically is an inaccurate term. It's more of
Advisory
a
bodies like departments.
yeah, yeah.
Sweet. And
I'd say
the
so. Yeah.
am I right? I feel like I've heard somewhere that the cabinet of the president is related somehow to the departments, like it's made up of the department heads or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I believe it's individuals that the president selects himself from those organizations,
Mm, okay.
yeah, and some dissenters of Doge would say that uh, any sort of any sort of I got so excited I spat of real power that that the that Doge would exercise would be unconstitutional, like cutting budgets and firing people, would
Mm,
be unconstitutional without given the green light from Congress, since Congress is in charge of the uh,
money.
mhm. Since
Mm,
like we were saying earlier, Article 1 gives Congress the power of the purse, and so without the go ahead from Congress, any sort of monetary or money related um, action would be unconstitutional. Um,
mm. Well, it's interesting. In the Article 1, it says that Congress shall have power to, to do taxes and things, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare. So it's providing for things. It's like to provide money to all the systems, but not necessarily dictate how it's spent, or maybe that's more the implicit details that have been worked out beyond just the big overview of the articles. Maybe that's been established in court cases or something.
mhm. So yeah, in kind of along lines with the or I guess as a response to the dissenting opinion of uh, of involvement in federal budgetary matters of Congress. Um, Certain cases, like West Virginia versus EPA from 2022, could provide a legal precedent. Uh, I think I'm using that term correctly, for the cutting of unlawful, quote unquote, waste and regulation. Um, but yeah, ultimately, we don't have, or it shouldn't,
Hmm.
sorry, ultimately, it shouldn't have difficulty justifying its constitutionality under Article 2, as long as it stays within the bounds of providing recommendations and avoids enforcing laws like the executive branch or reappropriating funds like the like Congress
Hmm.
does without congressional approval. And so as
So
long
they
as it
can't
kind of
enforce laws,
yeah, the
but the
executive
Department of
branch.
Education enforces laws to
Hmm,
prevent discrimination.
interesting. I'll have to do some research and we might have to do a follow up
Huh.
video on this.
Yeah, it's
Um,
interesting.
but yeah, I didn't catch that discrepancy. We'll have to do a part two on this probably. Um, but yeah, basically, as long as Doge stays within its bounds as an advisory body, kind of uh, treats itself as sort of an expert witness, you could say, in terms of pointing out unlawfulness,
Mhm.
then it should be fine in justifying itself as a constitutional or an organization that functions legally constitutionally. Yeah. And so, speaking of the Constitution, whether what do we do when things are explicitly or considered implicitly outlined in the Constitution? So the 10th Amendment, uh, which I mentioned earlier, outlines what to do when powers are not given to the federal government. Um, and
Default to the
important,
states.
yeah, and importantly, when not prohibited by the states specifically, the powers are given to the states to decide. And then on the federal level, there was the case in 1803 of Marbury versus Madison, um, which uh, is essentially the justification that is used to uh, justify judicial review, or what is called judicial review commonly, and is often used to determine constitutionality via Article 3 of the Constitution. And then, uh, like in the case of the Department of Education being for the general welfare, is often invoked when the Constitution doesn't say one way or another on a certain issue. Uh,
General welfare is very broad.
mhm, exactly, which I think is part of the reason why. Um, and so the executive power is another thing which, as long as there's no pushback from Congress, the Constitution doesn't really contradict uh, what is being done. The president can exercise power. For example, the creation of advisory bodies like the U.S. Department of Goodness, U.S. DOGE Service Temporary Organization, or the USD STO. And so, again, that's as long as Congress doesn't provide any or make any pushback. Um, and then, speaking of, I guess, implied powers that are not pushed back upon by Congress, Article 1's necessary and proper clause gives Congress the power to perform its functions like taxation and commerce. Again, like cases in the of the Department of Education, a lot, and like we've said multiple times during this video, the uh, the phrase "general welfare of the people" is one of those phrases that is used to kind of uh, provide justification for a lot of things that the government is trying to enact, or Congress is trying to enact. And then finally is the if things are not implied or explicitly stated within the Constitution, the amendment process under Article 5 um, outlines uh, what is to be done in cases when an amendment is sought after. Um, and essentially, it involves a lot uh, uh, of numbers, either within the states as a whole or as a group of bodies that come together, or within Congress, uh, which in, is when the const or is when a a group would come together to amend the Constitution. And again, Congress would do would have to approve 2/3 in total, and then 3/4 of the states, which would be quite a few. And then certain states have different requirements, but for better or worse, probably definitely for better, I would say the process is long and arduous, and the numbers needed to establish a convention are pretty substantial, and as such, the way to amend the Constitution is pretty difficult to come by. But yeah, and so I guess to kind of conclude, we've kind of gone over what the Department of Education is, what DOGE is, whether those bodies are constitutional, and then how to amend the Constitution when a power which isn't necessarily implied or explicitly stated in the Constitution is wanted to be provided to the government that is not provided to the states. And again, I guess just to conclude, Caleb, do you have any follow-up questions before we send these people on their merry way?
I think that's it. Just lots of little things I'm curious about.
Cool.
But yeah, I think this was informative.
And yeah, I think we might have to do a follow-up conversation to this conversation just to clarify any places where we might have been vague or incorrect. And in the comment section, please correct us if you've studied the conversation. Good heavens, the Constitution, and we said something potentially inaccurate or misleading. Please feel free to send us a kindly correction in the comments, just so that we can provide more accurate information in the future. And then yeah, just before we go, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and leave us a comment comment in the comments. Weird. Of anything else that you want us to cover, whether philosophical or governmental or metaphysical, even. Mathematics aren't exactly my strong suit, so I think I'll leave that stuff to Caleb. But yeah, I think that's enough for us, and we'll see you when we see you. Peace out.